The words sliced through the Providence Municipal Courtroom with surgical precision, delivered not as a question, but as a declaration of assumed authority. "You work for my family." Amelia Rowan stood rigid at the defendant's table, her designer suit perfectly pressed, her manicured finger aimed directly at the bench like a weapon. The flush, spreading across her cheeks, betrayed the confidence in her voice. Judge Frank Caprio, a veteran of Rhode Island's judicial system, known for both compassion and unwavering principle, didn't so much as blink. He placed his pen on the mahogany surface before him with deliberate care and regarded her over the rim of his reading glasses. "Miss Rowan," he said quietly, "lower your voice. I'll speak however I want." Her chin lifted defiantly. "My father is Senator Patrick Rowan. You work for him. You work for the people who elected him. That means you work for my family." The courtroom seemed to hold its collective breath. Spectators in the gallery exchanged uncertain glances. Miss Reyes, the court clerk, sat motionless at her station, her expression carefully neutral. Judge Caprio simply observed the young woman before him, his weathered face revealing nothing. "Miss Rowan," he replied with the same measured calm. "In this courtroom I work for the law. Sit down." She remained standing, arms now crossed defensively. "This is a joke. You're wasting my time over nothing. Sit down." She sat, jaw clenched, radiating indignation. The courtroom clock read 10:45 a.m. on what would prove to be a transformative morning in Providence Municipal Court, Courtroom 2A. Miss Reyes rose from her seat and addressed the room in clear, professional tones. "Case number 2025 TR 6619, State versus Amelia Rowan. The defendant faces charges including reckless driving, intimidation of a public officer, destruction of a citation, and failure to appear at a scheduled hearing." Amelia rolled her eyes theatrically and leaned toward her attorney, muttering something just loud enough to suggest contempt for the proceedings. Jordan Blake, her lawyer, stood with practiced smoothness. Everything about him spoke of expensive legal education and carefully cultivated courtroom presence. The tailored suit, the confident posture, the studied calm. "Your Honor, we're prepared to resolve this matter expeditiously with immediate payment of all applicable fines." Judge Caprio glanced at Blake briefly before returning his attention to the file spread before him. "Counselor." "Sit." "Your Honor." "Sit." Blake sat. Caprio turned a page, his movements unhurried. "Miss Rowan, you were issued a written warning 8 months ago. Do you remember the circumstances?" Amelia shrugged with studied indifference. "Not really." Miss Reyes efficiently pulled up a document on her computer screen. "Administrative warning, case 2024 MV 3304. Subject verbally harassed parking enforcement staff. Warning issued in lieu of citation." She paused, then continued reading. Prior warning notes include the following excerpt. Subject told officer, "My father will have your job. Behavior documented. Released with warning due to first offense and family request for leniency." Amelia waved her hand dismissively, as though swatting away an insignificant detail. "That was months ago." "It has nothing to do with this." "It has everything to do with this," Caprio said quietly. "It shows a pattern." "A pattern of what?" "Of believing rules don't apply to you." She leaned back in her chair with exaggerated casualness. "I don't think that." "Then why are you here?" "Because some cop decided to make an example out of me." Judge Caprio closed the file folder with deliberate finality. "We'll see." Amelia turned to her lawyer, her stage whisper clearly intended for the entire courtroom. "This is ridiculous. My dad funds half this state. One phone call and this disappears." Caprio's expression didn't change. He simply turned back to Miss Reyes. "What's the evidence?" Miss Reyes began listing the materials systematically. Body camera footage from Officer Elena Cruz, Security video from the cafe parking lot. Text messages sent by the defendant. Voicemail from Senator Rowan's chief of staff. Email correspondence from the Senate office. Witness statement from Margaret Doyle. Amelia laughed. A single sharp bark of disbelief. You're really doing all this over a traffic stop? Over your behavior during a traffic stop, Caprio corrected precisely. And what happened after? Nothing happened. Officer Cruz, please step forward. Officer Elena Cruz approached the witness stand with the bearing of someone accustomed to testifying under pressure. Late 30s, composed, professional. She carried a small notebook but kept it closed in her lap. Officer Cruz, Judge Caprio said, "Tell us what you observed on February 9th. Cruz nodded once. I was monitoring traffic near the intersection of Hope and Angel Streets. It was mid-morning, approximately 10:00 a.m. I observed a white Mercedes sedan traveling at approximately 47 miles per hour in a clearly marked 25-mile-per-hour zone. The vehicle was approaching a cafe with significant pedestrian traffic. What did you do? I activated my patrol lights and followed. The vehicle pulled into the cafe parking lot. I approached and requested license and registration. What happened then? Cruz glanced at her notes, though her recollection was clearly precise. The defendant provided her license but refused to provide registration. She asked if I knew who she was. I explained that wasn't relevant to the traffic stop. She responded, Cruz read directly from her notes now. It's relevant because my father signs your paychecks. Amelia scoffed audibly. That's not what I said, Cruz continued without acknowledging the interruption. I informed her she was being cited for reckless driving in a designated pedestrian zone. She took the citation, tore it in half, and threw it at me. Then she said I would regret writing it. Did she elaborate? Yes. She stated that her father would have me fired by the end of the day. Miss Reyes displayed a text message on the courtroom screen. The timestamp read, February 9th, 2025, 10:14 a.m. Amelia got pulled over by some power-tripping cop. This one will lose her job by tonight. Dad's already handling it. Judge Caprio studied the screen before turning his attention back to Amelia. Miss Rowan, did you send that text? She shifted in her seat. It was private, between me and a friend. But you sent it. Yeah. So what? So it demonstrates intent. You intended to use your father's position to retaliate against an officer performing her duties. Amelia's lawyer stood quickly. Your Honor, my client was merely venting frustration in a private... Counselor. Caprio's voice remained quiet but carried absolute authority. Sit down. Blake sat. Officer Cruz continued. As I was completing the traffic stop, an elderly woman was crossing the parking lot toward the cafe entrance. The defendant started her vehicle and accelerated rapidly. She passed within 3 feet of the woman. The woman had to step backward quickly to avoid being struck. Do we have video? Yes, Your Honor. Miss Reyes cued the security footage. The timestamp showed 10:03:11. The grainy but clear image captured a white Mercedes pulling forward suddenly. An older woman moving carefully with a cane jerked backward, clearly startled, nearly losing her balance. The car didn't slow. The body camera transcript appeared on screen next, February 9th, 2025, 10:03:11. Officer Cruz. Ma'am, stop your vehicle. Amelia Rowan. Get out of my way. Officer Cruz. You nearly struck a pedestrian. Amelia Rowan. She should have moved faster. The courtroom absorbed the audio in heavy silence. Amelia's face remained carefully neutral, but her hands tightened visibly in her lap. Judge Caprio removed his reading glasses and cleaned them slowly. Officer Cruz, did the defendant stop after you called out? No, Your Honor. She left the parking lot. I documented the near collision and added it to my incident report. Thank you, officer. Please remain available. Cruz returned to her seat. Caprio turned toward the gallery. Margaret Doyle, please come forward. An elderly woman rose carefully from the gallery seating. At 78 years old, with silver hair and a cane supporting her careful movements, Margaret Doyle embodied the vulnerability that traffic laws are designed to protect. She made her way slowly to the witness stand and settled into the chair. Mrs. Doyle, Judge Caprio said gently, can you tell us what you remember from that morning? Her voice emerged soft but steady, carrying the strength of decades spent teaching young people. I was walking from my car to the cafe. I use a cane. My knee isn't what it used to be. I heard an engine rev and looked up. A white car was coming toward me very fast. I tried to step back, but I nearly fell. Did the driver stop? No. She looked right at me and kept going. Did she say anything? Margaret hesitated, her discomfort evident. She yelled something. I couldn't hear it clearly, but it didn't sound kind. Miss Reyes read from Officer Cruz's report. Witness Mrs. Doyle stated driver yelled move while accelerating, witness visibly shaken. No injuries sustained, but incident clearly distressed her. Judge Caprio thanked Mrs. Doyle and asked her to remain nearby. She nodded and returned carefully to her seat. Ms. Rowan, Caprio said, do you remember Mrs. Doyle? Amelia tilted her head slightly. I remember someone was in the lot. I didn't almost hit her, that's an exaggeration. She had to jump back to avoid your vehicle. She was moving slow. That's not my fault. The courtroom seemed to compress around those words. Even Jordan Blake looked distinctly uncomfortable. Miss Reyes cleared her throat professionally. Your Honor, there's also a call log and correspondence from the Senate office. Proceed. She pulled up the documentation. 3 contacts were made within 2 hours of the incident. 1 voicemail from Senator Rowan's chief of staff. 2 emails from the Senate office to court administration. Caprio nodded. Read the voicemail. Voicemail. Transcript. February 9th, 2025, 11:47 a.m. This is David Carr calling from Senator Rowan's office regarding a traffic matter involving his daughter, Amelia. We'd appreciate a call back to discuss a quiet resolution. The senator values his relationship with the court and hopes this can be handled with discretion. Thank you. Judge Caprio set down the transcript. Miss Reyes continued reading from the screen. First email sent at 12:30 p.m. We respectfully request this matter be handled with minimal publicity, given the family's public service record. Second email sent at 1:22 p.m. Senator Rowan would like to personally discuss resolution options. The timeline spoke volumes. 9:22 a.m. Traffic stop initiated 10:03 a.m. Citation torn. Near collision. Documented 11:47 a.m. Voicemail left by Senate Chief of Staff 12:30 p.m. First email to court administration 1:22 p.m. Second email requesting meeting. Amelia leaned forward. My father was trying to help. That's what fathers do. Judge Caprio looked at her steadily. Help means supporting you through consequences, not erasing them. What's the difference? One teaches, the other enables. She shook her head. You don't understand how things work. I understand exactly how things work. That's why we're here. Amelia's voice rose. Do you know who my father is? The courtroom went absolutely still. Judge Caprio simply watched her. 5 seconds passed. 7, 10, 12. That's how long the courtroom forgot to breathe. Then Caprio spoke, his voice quiet but carrying to every corner of the room. Your father is Senator Patrick Rowan. He has served Rhode Island for 14 years. In 2019, he sponsored a bill protecting elderly pedestrians in crosswalks and parking zones. The bill passed unanimously. It was called the Safe Steps Act. Amelia blinked, clearly unprepared for this response. The woman you almost hit, Mrs. Doyle, is a retired schoolteacher. She taught for 37 years. Your father's campaign literature calls teachers the backbone of our communities. He says that every election, Amelia's face flushed. That's different. How? Because she's just... She stopped herself, but the damage was done. Just what? Caprio asked. Amelia hesitated, then spoke quietly. If she couldn't move fast enough, that's not my problem. The words landed like stones, dropping into still water. No one moved. No one spoke. The silence carried physical weight, suffocating in its completeness. Judge Caprio set his pen down again. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Miss Rowan, that is exactly your problem. Because you endangered her. Because you showed no concern. Because you tried to use your father's position to avoid accountability. And because you just proved you still don't understand what you did wrong. Amelia looked down at her hands. Judge Caprio opened the file again. Here's what I find. You drove recklessly in a pedestrian zone. You threatened a public officer. You destroyed government property. You failed to appear for your scheduled hearing. And after all that, your family attempted to pressure this court into silence. Blake stood. Your Honor, we object to the characterization. Sit down, counselor. Blake sat. Caprio continued. The base fine for these violations is $1,000. But I'm not interested in your father's money. I'm interested in whether you can learn what he apparently couldn't teach you. Which is what? Amelia asked, her voice small now. That public office isn't private power. That wealth and position don't grant immunity. That every person in this state, Mrs. Doyle, Officer Cruz, the parking attendant you harassed 8 months ago, matters as much as you do. Miss Reyes displayed the compliance requirements on screen. Case 2025-TR6619. Required actions. Handwritten apology letters to Officer Cruz and Mrs. Doyle. 120 hours with Elderly Independence Program. 2 public service announcement recordings. Ethics course completion. 800 1,000-word reflection on accountability. Deadline, 10 weeks. You have 10 weeks to complete a restorative program, Caprio said. You'll write formal apologies. You'll serve 120 hours assisting elderly Rhode Islanders with mobility and independence. You'll produce 2 public service announcements. You'll take an ethics course, and you'll write a detailed reflection on what accountability means. Amelia stared at him. And if I do all that, half the fine will be suspended. If you don't, the full amount applies plus additional penalties. This is insane. This is consequences. Judge Caprio turned to Miss Reyes. This court is also adopting new protocols. Any contact from elected officials or their staff regarding pending cases must be logged publicly. Any attempt to influence outcomes triggers automatic review. And any defendant who threatens court personnel will face escalated charges. This policy takes effect immediately. Amelia's voice came out shaky. My father's going to be furious. Your father doesn't answer for your choices. You do. She said nothing. Do you understand the terms? Amelia nodded. I need to hear you. I understand. Good. Court adjourned. The gavel came down softly. The first week was warfare. Amelia submitted a handwritten apology to Officer Cruz that Miss Reyes rejected within hours. It was 4 sentences long and included the phrase, I'm sorry if you felt threatened. The second version wasn't better. Miss Reyes returned it with a note. Acknowledge what you did. Don't apologize for someone else's feelings. The third draft took Amelia 2 days. She rewrote it 11 times. When it was finally approved, she felt exhausted and something uncomfortably close to shame. The service hours proved even more challenging. She reported to the Rhode Island Elderly Independence Program on a cold Tuesday morning. The director, Mrs. Chen, handed her a schedule and a name tag. You'll assist with transportation coordination, meal delivery, and home safety checks. Listen more than you talk. These people have earned your respect. Amelia was paired with a volunteer coordinator named Tom, who introduced her to the clients. The first was a woman named Iris, 83 years old, who lived alone and needed transportation to medical appointments. "Why are you here?" Iris asked during the first drive. Amelia lied. "Community service requirement." "For what?" "Traffic violation." Iris studied her in the rearview mirror. "You don't seem happy about it." "I'm not." "Then you're wasting both our times." Progress timeline. Week 1, first apology rejected, 9 hours completed. Week 2, second apology rejected, 14 hours completed. Week 3, final apology to cruise approved, 22 hours completed. Week 4, PSA scripting begun, 35 hours completed. Week 5, first PSA recorded, rejected, re-recorded, 51 hours completed. Week 6, Mrs. Doyle's apology submitted, 68 hours completed. Week 7, ethics course completed, 84 hours completed. Week 8, second PSA approved, 103 hours completed. Week 9, essay in progress, 117 hours completed. Week 10, all requirements completed, 122 hours logged by Week 4. Something fundamental shifted. Amelia met a man named Robert, 79 years old, who reminded her painfully of Mrs. Doyle. He moved slowly with a walker and told stories about teaching history for 40 years. He asked her why she was volunteering. This time, she told the truth. "I almost hit someone like you," she said quietly. "And I didn't care." Robert nodded slowly. "And now?" "Now I can't stop thinking about it." "That's called a conscience," he said. "Don't ignore it." The public service announcements proved harder than expected. The first script she wrote was defensive, riddled with excuses. The program director rejected it immediately. "This isn't about you protecting yourself. It's about you protecting others." She rewrote it, and again, and again. By week 6, she'd submitted the apology letter to Mrs. Doyle. It took 3 drafts. The final version began. "I endangered you because I was careless and entitled. You deserved safety and respect. I gave you neither. I am deeply sorry." Mrs. Doyle responded 2 weeks later with a handwritten note. "I forgive you. Use this lesson well." Amelia kept the note in her bag. The ethics course forced her to confront truths she'd avoided her entire life. Questions like, "Does your family's position grant you special treatment?" And, "What responsibility comes with privilege?" The answers weren't easy. She failed 2 quizzes before she passed. The essay took the longest. She started it 6 times, deleting each draft. The prompt was deceptively simple. Write about what accountability means when you're used to being protected from it. She finally wrote, "Accountability means accepting that your actions have consequences, even when your name usually shields you from them. I thought my father's position meant I was untouchable. It didn't. It just meant I'd never been forced to face what I'd done. I threatened Officer Cruz because I was scared and used to getting my way. I almost hurt Mrs. Doyle and didn't care because I'd never been taught that other people's safety mattered as much as my convenience. I was wrong. Power without responsibility isn't strength. It's cowardice dressed up as authority." She submitted it on a Sunday night. Miss Reyes called Monday morning. "It's approved. Everything's complete," Amelia exhaled. "Thank you." "Officer Cruz left a note for you." "What does it say?" She said, "You showed up and did the work. That's more than most people do." The follow-up hearing was scheduled for late April. Amelia walked into the same courtroom, but this time she didn't cross her arms or roll her eyes. She stood straight, hands folded, and waited. Judge Caprio reviewed the file. Miss Reyes confirmed completion. Letters delivered, hours logged, PSAs recorded, course finished, essay submitted. "Miss Rowan," Caprio said, "you've completed the program. What did you learn?" She thought carefully. "That my father's position doesn't make me important. What I do with my choices makes me important." "Anything else?" That people like Mrs. Doyle and Officer Cruz matter just as much as I do. I knew that in theory. Now I know it in practice. Caprio nodded slowly. The court accepts your completion. The suspended fine is remitted. Your record will reflect successful rehabilitation. He paused. I want you to remember something. Your father built a career on public service. You almost destroyed someone while hiding behind his name. That's not service. That's betrayal. Don't do it again. Amelia's throat tightened. I won't, Your Honor. Good. Case closed. The gavel came down. Amelia left the courtroom and saw Mrs. Doyle sitting on a bench in the hallway. They made eye contact. Mrs. Doyle smiled faintly and nodded. Amelia nodded back. Outside, the April air smelled like rain. Amelia pulled out her phone and saw 3 missed calls from her father. She didn't call back. Not yet. Instead, she walked to the bus stop and stood next to an older man with a cane. When the bus arrived, she waited for him to board first. A week later, Senator Rowan's office issued a quiet internal policy. No staff member may contact judicial offices regarding family matters. All interactions with courts must follow standard public procedures. Mrs. Doyle framed Amelia's apology letter and hung it in her kitchen. Officer Cruz kept the note Amelia sent her in her locker. And in a courtroom across Providence, Judge Frank Caprio opened the next file, adjusted his glasses, and said what he always said. Let's proceed. The law turned, indifferent to names, responsive only to truth. This is a dramatization created for storytelling and educational purposes. It does not constitute legal advice.